Hello, this is Let's Talk About Myths, baby! And I am your host, Liv, here with a very special Q&A episode. Thank you all so much for submitting your questions, be they Assassin's Creed Odyssey related or otherwise. I so appreciate it. It's been a little while since I did a Q&A episode, and I think it's time. And also, I'm in the middle of moving between apartments and basically have zero time and or no internet in my new apartment, and it's all very messy and up in the air. Good times. So thank you all so much for coming along for the Q&A ride, specifically about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, because now I know it's a fairly old game at this point, and so many of you have moved on to other mythological games and ask me whether I've played them or will play them daily. To me, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is still very new. It is the first video game beyond N64 that I have ever played, and I have played it now an absurd number of hours and quite obsessively, and I don't intend to stop anytime soon. So with that out of the way, this is episode 112. Alcibiades was very real. An Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and whatever else, Q&A. First, let me get a very common question out of the way. No, I'm sorry, I have not played Hades or Immortals Phoenix Rising. I don't want to make any promises. I might in the future. I've heard they're both very good, but as I have said, I am not historically a gamer. It is Assassin's Creed Odyssey that brought me into this whole world, and so far it is the only thing I do. Now, that all said, what I love about Odyssey is the historicity of it, more so than the mythology. So for me, that's the love of it. It's that actually feeling like I'm back in that world that I so desperately want to visit. So the mythology just doesn't do it for me in the same way. Which leads me to another commonly asked question. So, have I played the DLCs? This is something I'm asked a lot, and I don't blame you. So, to make a long story short, yes, I started playing the Atlantis one, but then I lost my saved game and so can't go back yet because I have to deal with the Minotaur and Medusa and the Cyclops again, which I frankly am dreading. I will get rid of them again and then therefore be allowed to go back into Atlantis. And I know I could just jump straight in, but I don't want to. I want to go through the game because that's kind of my crazy. But when I was playing it before, again, it's kind of the same thing for why I'm not like super pumped for those other games, because it's all just sort of somebody's idealized version of the mythology and, you know, the Elysian Fields. Whereas what I love is the history that's in Odyssey. It's very real. Yes, they made some stuff up, but they based so much on the archaeology and what we actually know is factually true about ancient Greece that for me, that's the thrill. It's not so much the mythology. I mean, that said, like, I love the mythological creatures in that real world of ancient Greece, like loved the whole Daughters of Artemis bit. I recently defeated the last of those mythical creatures. That I love, but I love it alongside that historical aspect. And now with all that rambling out of the way, on to your actual questions. All right, this one is from Twitter. The name on there is simply X10, so you know who you are. They have a two-part question. The mythology always writes Ares as a hot-headed asshole, but I don't remember coming across anything in Greek mythology accusing him of rape. Have you come across anything that does? If no, do you think he's written that way because the ancients loved to hate him? So first, I did pick this at random, and it does not include AC Odyssey, which is fine. Like I said, we're going to cover everything. So Ares, honestly, from everything that I have come across, I can't think of any prominent story where he assaults anyone. That said, I think there probably is one. If not a major story, then a minor anecdote or something. But overall, I personally find Ares to be one of the least problematic. I would also push back on him being portrayed as a hot-headed asshole in the mythology. That's not really true either. Honestly, he's pretty minimally involved as a full-blown character, and the stories that primarily involve him, the really famous ones at least, really just involve him loving Aphrodite and basically those two circumventing her marriage to Hephaestus. That said, I know there are a lot of shorter, more fragmentary Ares myths that I don't know off the top of my head. I actually am planning a upcoming episode where we cover some really specific Ares myths. It won't come next month because that is International Women's Month, and I'm having a whole party with my episodes that month. My God, there's quite the plan in place. But in the very near future, there will be a bit more on Ares. But as you know, he's the god of war, so there's certain things that come along with that when it comes to actually being in a war time scenario. But overall, he's pretty lacking in general problematic areas. You know, he's not one of the more troubling gods. Okay, so similar, Nora Dallaire asks, okay, so I'm obsessed with the cult of Ares in Odyssey. Is there any basis for that? Because damn, the pyres made of dead bodies freaked me out. So this one's also from Twitter, and I love it. So we're pulling Ares questions into Odyssey, and I respect it. So, technically speaking, there was a cult of Ares in ancient Greece, but that said, there was a cult for basically all of the gods. It basically just means like a cult of worship. It's just how people worshipped those gods. When it comes to Ares, there aren't a lot of temples associated with him, so certainly people worshiping him would have had to do it in other ways, in other locations. You know, when you're going into war, when you're dealing with that kind of thing, you're certainly going to worship Ares in some way, sacrifice to him, you know, pour libations, do the whole jam. But as far as, you know, a whole group of people who are like living in caves primarily with crazy, freaky death kind of makeup and hoods and pyres of dead bodies and all of that comes along with the cult of Ares in Odyssey. No, I would say that's basically made up by the game, but I love it. The cult of Ares is one of my favorite things in the game. It's just a very fun group to come across, to defeat. I love that they all have like some pretty crazy anger issues when you're fighting them. Generally, I really appreciate that addition to the game, but I would say those more severe and creepy and scary aspects of them are invented by Odyssey. All right, we're going to do a chunk now from the Instagram sticker I put up asking for these questions. Have you played the DLC Where You Meet Hades? What are your thoughts? So I basically already answered that. I have played the very beginning of it, but basically only to the point where I encountered Persephone and then just generally was kind of bummed out by the mythological aspects as created there. I also do have a problem with the whole like alien part that comes along with Assassin's Creed in general. It is a bummer to me, you know, as a lover of ancient Greece and the culture and the mythology, to suggest that it is in any way related to alien life. But all to say, no, like I didn't get to the part where you encounter anyone beyond Persephone and Adonis and Hermes, I guess. That was it. Who do you think should play Odysseus and Penelope in the Hollywood movie version? God, if only, right? I mean, geez. But they'd have to portray Odysseus right, where, you know, he's an asshole, but also great. You know, I love him, but he's a real dick. Anyway, I also can't, frankly, see beyond Sean Bean in Troy. I don't love the movie Troy beyond the fact that Brad Pitt is very hot as Achilles. But I do think Odysseus is absolutely perfectly portrayed by Sean Bean. I think Sean Bean is the king. I know he's kind of too old by this point, but to me, he will simply always be Odysseus. Are the weapons used in AC Odyssey an accurate representation of what were used? God, I have no idea. I really don't have a good grounding in ancient warfare. Because that is just super not within my interest realm. I know in general, they really appreciated spears in the ancient world, found those to be some of the best types of weapons. I personally hate using a spear in AC Odyssey. I find it too cumbersome. I'm a sword or dagger fan myself. But of course, I'm sure Odyssey invents a lot of more intricate weaponry because there's so many different types of weapons that you can collect. So I would say, parts of it are definitely on the more accurate side. They would have had a lot of varied weapons. There are a lot of podcasts you can listen to that are not mine about that. There's a Hellenistic history podcast that I'm going to forget the exact name of, but that's general idea. I haven't listened yet myself, but I would recommend it. There are lots. I would not recommend the History of Ancient Greece podcast, as the host was outed by as a super creep. He had some really pretty dark Me Too moments come out about him in recent times. So while that podcast is still available, I would say don't support it and support any of the many other histories related to the ancient world podcasts that are out there. Did Cassandra exist? I mean, there were lots of women named Cassandra, including, of course, the one from Troy, who we all know and love. But no, the characters of Cassandra and Alexios are invented. Do you believe the reconstruction of the Greek historical sites to be accurate? For the most part, yes. And like I said, that's why this game appeals to me in a way that the other ones don't. For me, that's what I need. I need to feel like I'm walking in ancient Greece, because that's the thing that gives me this absolutely ridiculous thrill. I know the recreation of the Parthenon, or the Acropolis rather, the whole thing is very accurate. I don't think we can say with any kind of certainty to what level. I do also think that while the game tried to stay pretty within the bounds of the time period of the Peloponnesian War, and even gave itself a year, I forget what it is, but it's within the Peloponnesian War, obviously, because that's what you're doing in the game. I'm sure there are parts where there are some inclusions of, slightly ahistorical aspects just in terms of the time period itself, but I wouldn't fault them for that. One of the things that really thrills me in the game is that you get Bronze Age sites, archaeological sites that are ruins in the game because they were Bronze Age sites. So obviously the Palace of Knossos on Crete is the major example for me. That, I don't know about the size and the scope, but the things that they've included in Knossos in terms of the historical accuracy are pretty crazy. So, the types of columns that they use on that palace are very accurate to the Bronze Age remnants that we do have of the Palace at Knossos. Same with the, I forget what they're called. They're the way that all the tops of the roofs on that palace have these cool horn type decorative aspects. There is a specific name for it that I'm not going to remember, but I do remember generally learning about it in a Bronze Age archaeology course in university, and those are very accurate. One thing that the game does, which is interesting but not accurate, is that basically they have all of the Bronze Age sites across all of the islands. I don't think they have them on mainland Greece, but all of the islands, they have them as Minoan. And of course, the Minoans were not the whole of the islands. The there's Cycladic people of Bronze Age Greece that were not considered Minoans. They would have traded with the Minoans and the like, but they didn't have the same architecture and stuff. So I understand the purpose. Obviously in this game we're talking about creating this massive world and architecture, and they couldn't have that many varied types of archaeological styles, and I don't blame them. So that's one thing, is that they do kind of generalize a bit when it comes to certain aspects, specifically Bronze Age sites. I think that also they kind of conflate the Mycenaean Bronze Age sites on the mainland, their archaeological architectural styles, they kind of conflate those with Minoan as well by just kind of putting all the Bronze Age in one kind of bucket. And again, don't blame them. There's only so much you can do when you're creating this massive world. But overall, the accuracy is pretty real. One of the things I really appreciate in terms of the accuracy is just how colorful the world is. So, of course, the ancient Greek world was colorful. They painted all their marble, they painted their statues. It was not the way we have it now, where everything's clean and pristine white marble. That all happened over time. The paint decayed. And so if you actually, go through the Acropolis Museum in Athens, which is an absolutely incredible museum, just so beyond. It's fucking unreal. I went to Athens before and after it was built, and what a difference when it comes to learning about the Acropolis. It's crazy. Anyway, within that museum, they have a lot of statues that have some remnants of paint left over, and then a couple too where they've recreated the paint to show what it would have looked like. And that's one thing that Odyssey does really, really well, is portray this really colorful and beautiful and intricately designed and decorated world of ancient Greece. Next question, which of the main characters of the AC storyline actually existed, and how accurate were the depictions? So, storyline wise, I would say none of it. I don't want to say none of it overall, but the cult of Cosmos is not real. Most of the main characters beyond Cassandra and Alexios and the cult aspects were real. Obviously, you do a lot of wandering with Herodotus, who, is sort of historically termed the first historian. That's up for debate, technically speaking, but he was very real regardless. And you also deal with Pericles as the leader of Athens and Creon as his rival. There's no cult involved. But Pericles and Cleon were very real. Alcibiades is real. That's a key point, and I think that's a question that comes up later. We'll go more into that. Obviously, you deal with Hippocrates, which is super cool. He was obviously real, where we get the Hippocratic Oath, one of the first doctors in the way we know them now. So, a lot of those characters that you encounter in that way were very much real. You just kind of have to separate them from the whole cult of Cosmos bit. So again, Pericles and Cleon were very real. Pericles was the leader of Athens for a long time during the Peloponnesian War, but he wasn't killed by a cult of Cosmos. And, Cleon, I think Cleon was his major rival. Just in general, Aspasia, Pericles is I don't want to use the word consort, but that's basically what she was. She was real, and they had a child together, actually. At Pericles' symposium, which symposiums were very real, you get to meet, all of my favorite people. I nearly cried with happiness when I realized I got to get Euripides and Aristophanes drunk. What a game. So yeah, you meet Sophocles, you meet Euripides and Aristophanes, and again, Herodotus is there throughout. The whole thing, in terms of the accuracy of the Peloponnesian War's main characters, is pretty legit. I do think they kind of smushed some timelines together so that you could have so many famous characters in at once. I haven't looked into the ways in which these people overlap, but I don't think they overlap to the degree that they do in the game. But that said, what a great thing to kind of squish and play with when it comes to time, just so that you can have all of these characters in one game. It's brilliantly done, absolutely. All right, on to some more Instagram questions. How far in the game are you? Will you be buying the extras? They're worth it. So I've basically already answered that. I did beat the whole main game and then started playing as Alexios to kind of, and then picked other routes so I could kind of see where the game diverged if you made different decisions. And then I accidentally saved over my totally game finished Cassandra, who, you know, had beat all of the Atlantis characters so that I could go to Atlantis and the whole thing. And then suddenly she was overwritten and I cried a little, to be honest. But I'm in the midst of doing that again. But obviously, like, I mean, for me, it was also just getting used to playing a game in addition to this one. But now I'm so much better at it that it's actually pretty great. Like, I haven't beat the game yet. And I'm at like almost the same level as when I beat the game and then some last time. So that's pretty fun. She's going to be super high level, which is great. And then I will probably eventually keep playing that Alexios and see all the differences. When I first beat the game, I did get the so-called good option, where, you know, spoilers, the whole family is alive and they're all on your ship together. It's pretty adorable. But I wanted to see the other versions as well. So that said, like I have in the past beat the whole game. I'm nearing it again in my redo version, but I don't have I don't even remember what the other DLC is, but I might get it. I don't know. I've heard like kind of different things, but at the same time, I kind of want more, and it feels like it's more in that same world of ancient Greece versus the mythological world. So that kind of appeals to me more than Atlantis. I'll probably keep going in the Atlantis stuff, but I mean, Atlantis alone to me isn't even Greek myth, you know, like I will be covering it more in depth so I can kind of explain that more in a future episode. But yeah, to me, Atlantis isn't Greek myth because it isn't Greek myth, technically speaking. And so to include it is kind of in itself, even going beyond the mythology into sort of a very different realm in terms of just ancient Greece in general and how they understood their gods and goddesses and how they understood everything. Like, honestly, I mean, the gist of Atlantis historically is that Plato mentions it in passing. Well, not in passing, but like in one of his dialogues to prove a point. He references this concept of Atlantis, but it doesn't even feel like Plato believed it, and there are no other sources who talked about it. So it's just simply not a Greek myth. Again, there's more to it. Well, there's barely more to it than that, but it's sort of a very bizarre thing the way it's exploded into what it is now, based on the fact that truly, like, it's literally in Plato's dialogue, Timaeus and Critias, and that's it. That's the whole of it. So that's all to say. Yes, I have the Atlantis one, and I will probably maybe keep playing it. We'll see. And I'm kind of interested in the other one, but I haven't thought about it. Is it good? Tell me. Someone else asks, should I get AC Odyssey? What made you start playing? Yes, you absolutely should. I had been told to play it like since it came out. All of you had been messaging me all the time, and I was kind of vaguely interested, but like I said, I had never played like a video game before, so for me it was sort of a bit more of a stretch. But then I've seen pictures and kind of lost my mind over how incredible it looked, and I was told that it's basically just like wandering ancient Greece, and that's what sold me, honestly, is someone being like, it's just you can wander ancient Greece. And between the pandemic and not being able to do anything or go anywhere, and also just having more time since leaving my job, it just seemed the best thing. And it has been, because it's like, I can't travel. I can't go to Greece. I desperately want to. I don't really do anything beyond like get groceries and like see my mom and sister. So being able to kind of escape to an ancient Greek world on my comfortable couch with a glass of wine is the best. Will I do a whole episode on Odyssey? I'd love that. I mean, basically this is it. I wouldn't really know how to put together an episode on it completely, and as much as I love the historical stuff, I wouldn't totally know where to begin in terms of researching the historical truths and untruths. So yeah, this is basically my episode on Odyssey for sure. It's just kind of me talking to you guys about it and answering your questions. Now, this one I think is a really interesting point. There were pronunciations that were unexpected. Thoughts? So, and I did actually confirm this with just like a cursory Google search, but it was my original assumption. They essentially use modern Greek pronunciations of the words, and that's why it's confusing. So, modern Greek is quite different in terms of pronunciations, notably the letter beta, which is sort of it looks like an English B-ish. But it does originally in the ancient Greek, it mirrored a B sound, like a B sound. But in modern Greek, as I understand it, it's more of a V sound, which is why a place like, and I don't know the accurate ancient pronunciation of, but Euboea, the island, they call it Evia, and Boeotia, which is how I understand to pronounce it, but I don't know again if I'm right, they say Viotia. So you're getting these different uses of the letters in terms of the pronunciation because the game didn't attempt to recreate a classical pronunciation of ancient Greek. And I don't really blame them, but that is where the confusion lies. But also, we have to remember that if you're comparing it to me or even just like generally English speaking, like not, English speaking in terms of, North America or Australia or UK or whatever, our pronunciations are very much based in English. If I were to try to pronounce ancient Greek words with some kind of accent, for one, it would be really hard for me. It would be way too much work and effort, and it would sound weird because I otherwise speak with a very, North American / some people would say iconically Canadian accent. So if I were to try to say things, with a Greek accent, it would be silly. And I certainly wouldn't want to attempt it. I personally think that I could do a slightly better job on pronunciations, but again, it's all really up in the air in terms of, how things should be pronounced now if you're not overall speaking ancient Greek or modern Greek. There isn't really a cut and dry pronunciation for a lot of things because of trying to say them in English, but also time and, the way things change. And there's so many different pronunciations of Greek. I'm starting like an absolute base level ancient Greek class and just learning originally, or so far I've learned like the alphabet and stuff like that. And there's like a classical pronunciation. I'm sure there's an archaic pronunciation, but it's not included in my class. Classical, and then Cune, which is like biblical and later, and then there's modern. Like there's so many pronunciations of Greek that I don't blame Odyssey with going with modern, because obviously it was going to be the easiest and they could just get Greek people. I don't know if they have Greek people speaking, but I mean, they certainly sound like they could be. So that's where the pronunciation things come into play. It does cause me to be confused a lot, not so much in the game, like I know I can tell what they're talking about, but more like questioning how I pronounce things. Then I have to remind myself, like, no, it is modern Greek, like you're not necessarily doing it wrong, and it would be really hard to try to pronounce it like this. And anyway, it's a whole thing, but that is where the pronunciation kind of questions come in. All right, a non-Odyssey related question is non-Greco-Roman mythology that most interests me. Egyptian definitely. And they add, also, if you could say hi to Katie in Texas, my mom and one of your devoted listeners. Hi, Katie in Texas. That's just fun. Another unrelated question is your new book thick or thin? Just wondering if I should order hard copy for my table or Kindle. Thick or thin is a tricky question, I would argue. I haven't seen it. So I don't know, but I will tell you that the illustrations are amazing. So I would recommend a print copy, because I mean, depending, I guess a tablet's going to show the illustrations pretty well, but I would say print because the illustrations are amazing. Have you been to Hadestown the musical? No, and I haven't listened to it either. I'm sorry. I've listened to like one song and it bugged me. I know I should give it more of a chance, and I'm sure it's wonderful and I respect it greatly, but also no, I have not. Next question, how's your cat? Haven't heard any meows in the background in a while. My cat is great. If you follow my personal account on Twitter, you will note that every single night I post a picture of him sleeping on his stuffed shark because he is a weird-ass cat. No, he's very good. He just doesn't seem to come on and meow anymore. That was sort of in the first apartment I had when recording this podcast. He seemed to really require being around me a little bit more than he does now. He screams a lot at me, but weirdly not when I'm recording. It's kind of nice if it means that he's not in it quite as much. What do you think of Hercules' Legendary Journeys series and Xena Warrior Princess? So I got confused at the end of that. But I used to watch them in the 90s when I was a kid, and I haven't really since. Kevin Sorbo is a shithead, so I don't really care to watch Hercules. I do want to watch Xena again, but also sometimes I've tried to watch like the first episode, and it was just so 90s and so old that I stopped. But I'll probably try to go back because it's a really good memories. Like I have really great memories of watching that a lot. My mom has a lot of like really big badass lady hippie friends. And when we moved out west where there's a lot of that world, Xena really came along with it. My mom had a lot of friends who had a lot of Xena in their lives. And we definitely really watched a ton of that show when I was young. Will you make an ep on the different kinds of ancient magic asking because of your books? Yeah, I've done one. It's called, I don't know, but it has the word magic in the title for sure. Yep. I covered kind of what I could out of the mythological witches, like Circe and Hecate and Medea, but also from all the witchcraftian books that I have. I'm always looking for more content to do more of an episode. So, as I come across more, I would happily do another one. But for now, there is definitely an episode to check out. Did Zeus also rape Persephone? I read it somewhere, but I refuse to accept it. Yes. I think so. I mean, it's either that or it was consensual, but like unlikely. And also, he's her dad. So gross. But Persephone's only real recorded child is a god named Zagreus, who is fathered by Zeus. So yeah. But again, like people have this thing for Persephone. But you do have to remember, she didn't really go beyond the rest of the gods and goddesses in the mythology. She was one of them, and she and Hades had all the same kinds of flaws that everyone else has, including the fact that he did kidnap her. Like, I know everyone wants to love them and ship them, and I personally don't understand it. I do enjoy Lore Olympus for what it is, I will say. Like, I find it very respectable what Rachel's doing. She's put a total different spin on it, so you can kind of separate it from the story of abduction. And I really like the modern adaptation and all of that. So I really quite enjoy Lore Olympus, especially her Hephaestus. Oh my God, it blew my mind. But I personally, I don't get the full-on romanticization of them. And you just have to remember that, like, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to phrase. I don't want to burst anyone's bubbles, but Zeus was awful to everyone, and Persephone was one of them. And Zeus is the one who gave Hades, quote unquote, permission to abduct her. It's all dark, all that shit's fucked up. Fucking Greek mythology is bananas fucked up. That's a technical term. Have you ever considered reading Percy Jackson? Well, this gets asked every time I do a Q&A, and I'm really sorry to say the answer will always be no. I don't want to. Thank you for understanding. If the gods made a hockey team, who is in goal and who is captain? I think maybe the assumption here is because I'm Canadian, I have any kind of anything on hockey, but I do not care. I do not care. You come up with that, and that'll be your mythological hockey team. What's your favorite food? Also, I love your podcast. Thank you. And Greek food. Ha ha ha. Yeah, it's really cliche, but it's really true. I could eat olives for the rest of my life. How did you find the process of writing your book? Pre-ordered, can't wait. Thank you for pre-ordering. Everyone, please pre-order. It's a really big deal, and pre-orders help immensely. It was the most stressful thing I've ever done, and it is still one of the most stressful things I've ever done. And my life is a little bit of an anxious mess at the moment. That's a bit of an overshare, but it's true. I had to write the book very quickly, And not only that, but when I originally agreed to it and signed on, I was not working full time because of the pandemic. I was only working at I was managing a store, but we weren't open, so I was barely there. And then as soon as I physically had to start writing the book, my store reopened, so I had to be the manager of a bunch of teenagers and early 20s people while in a pandemic and trying to navigate reopening in a mall in a pandemic and also write a full book. It was really stressful. It was really stressful. And I can't wait till I physically have it in my hands, because then everything I think will feel a lot more exciting. Any asexual myths? This is an interesting question, and one that I've been thinking more and more about lately. So the ancient Greeks didn't think of gender in the way that we did, so there isn't really any way to say. Some of them, gender concepts that are more obvious are like the men who love each other. But at the same time, I don't think that you can like conclusively say that anyone was gay. Like they kind of loved whoever they loved, and I'm sure there were asexual people then, and I'm sure that there were myths that people would have considered what we now believe to be, or understand rather, what we now understand to be asexual. But because the concept didn't exist, we can't really place that idea onto anyone. Some people subscribe to the idea that Artemis was asexual. Personally, I think, again, because they didn't know that concept as we know it now, you can't really conclusively say that. But I pretty much stand by the idea that, like, if you are an asexual person, if you are a gay person, if you are a transgender person, take what myth you want. Like, there are definitely gods and goddesses that you can identify with in your gender expression and identity, and they can be what you want them to be. Like, just because we can't technically speaking say that like definitively someone was X doesn't mean you can't personally believe that they were for you, or just personally believe that in general. Like, do what you want. Like the gods were mythological concepts, and I think that they really exist for us to just be what we need to be at any given time. So, you do you. If you want to believe Artemis is asexual because of the story surrounding her, that is, absolutely a convincing argument to be made. And there's a lot more than that as well. But it's just sort of a really weird kind of thing because the concepts weren't the same. And so asexuality in specifically I find to be one of the trickier aspects, just because it is something that, while they may have understood to be a general concept, like they didn't explicitly refer to it or understand it in the way that we understand asexuality, and therefore like there's no concrete examples of that, if that makes any sense. All right, jumping back to some email questions. Mike asks, a question I had is, what do you think about the ancient Scythians, or Scythians, I never know how to pronounce it, as being a source of the Amazons myth? There have been a number of graves from that time period of women buried with swords and axes. I heard that on a YouTube channel, possibly a podcast. Unfortunately, for the life of me, I can't remember right now. No problem. Also, to relate this to AC Odyssey, do Amazons make an appearance in the game at all? I haven't beaten the game yet, lost a save game, had to start over. I feel that. So, I need to do more research on this. Again, this will happen in an upcoming episode. But as far as I know, it's a pretty solid explanation that the Scythians were indeed the interpretations of the Amazons. As far as I know, they had a lot of female warriors and, did a lot of horseback riding into war. That's not a technical term. But I think it's a pretty solid argument based on the very little that I know. But again, I will know more soon. As for in Odyssey, kind of. So I'm obsessed with having my Cassandra be totally decked out in all the epic Amazon gear. So she basically walks around looking like an Amazon, which I think is badass. But I also think that's kind of the only connection to be made in Odyssey. But it's not a bad one. Some more questions from Chris. Did you play as Cassandra or Alexios? Any reason you chose one over the other? I started with Cassandra, both because she's a woman and because everyone told me I should. And then, like I said, I do have another game where I've played some as Alexios. I really prefer Cassandra. She's a complete and utter badass. And I just think Alexios suits being Deimos. But I mean, for me, it's just like, well, if I'm going to have the opportunity to play as a totally badass female warrior, like I'm obviously going to do it. Chris had a lot of other questions, but for the most part, I've already answered them, except for the last one, which was, ever get one of those blasted sea shanties stuck in your head? So catchy. I teach music at a small college, and I have transcribed 10 of the shanties over the holiday break. I gave them to our choral director, and now our chamber choir is going to sing them in concert this semester. So stoked. That makes me so happy. And also, yes, absolutely, they've gotten stuck in my head. I love them. I just love this game, but like, I absolutely love the shanties. But then also I love that you can be wandering through a town and somebody will be singing it to themselves as well. So you get kind of like all the different varied interpretations of, like, I don't know what it is, however many songs there are. Chris seems to have transcribed 10 of them, so there must be at least 10. Anyway, yes, no, I've absolutely got them stuck in my head. I absolutely love them, and it thrills me to no end that the chamber choir is going to sing them in concert. Oh my God. Back to Twitter, the Sass Patch asked me, what was your favorite myth inclusion into real life Greece part of AC Odyssey? I mean, I like all the animals they have to defeat, except for the hyena, which pretty sure is not a thing at all in any myth ever. If I'm wrong, please, God, shout at me. But that was a weird addition on Kythera. But otherwise, I loved them, and it's all just so fucking fun. But for me, the most thrilling part, like I've mentioned, is the real stuff. So it was going to the symposium in Athens and meeting Euripides. And I was like, holy fuck, that's Euripides. And that was another example of the funny pronunciation. And I think, again, that's the modern Greek coming out, because they call him like Euripides. And again, but I'm saying it in a very like Canadian English way of Euripides. So such is life, we all have to deal with the different ways in which these things can be said and pronounced. And but again, Odyssey does, as far as I understand, use modern Greek, which is where all the sort of oddities that you might have noticed come in. Well, as much as I feel like I could keep going on about this forever, I think this was a sufficiently long episode of questions. I will just finish this by saying that, again, yes, Alcibiades is a very real person. I don't know enough about him. Like I said, I don't know enough about the history, and I'd love to dive in more if I can sort of find the best source for doing that. But from what I understand the kind of funny play on him is that he seems to have sort of appeared kind of everywhere throughout the history of the Peloponnesian War, and just kind of seems to have had a hand in so many things and just like been at so many different places during this war that it is sort of a perfect running joke to have him sort of appear in this game just constantly. His sort of like over-sexed character, I don't know about the accuracy of that, but I mean, God, he's just so entertaining in the game and so ridiculous. And it's just, I love the running joke of just kind of like, dude, oh my God, you again, and you're flirting again, and you want to have sex with me again? Ugh, Alcibiades. I also do love the running jokes of Socrates being just like so long-winded and like, yeah, we can appreciate him, but also kind of wish he'd shut up. I mean, this is why I find Odyssey so much more appealing than those other mythologically based games. And it's just simply that, like, when it comes to this, like, yes, obviously mythology is my thing, but mythology is my thing in sort of the way that you can interpret it in whatever way you want. So I don't really care for other interpretations of it. It just doesn't thrill me in the same way. Whereas ancient Greece is also wildly my thing. And my biggest desire on this planet is to just fucking get a time machine and go back there and see everything and experience everything. And so because this game is so accurate and so detailed and so widespread and has such a huge world to explore, to me, this is the closest thing that I have to this. Like, as I'm speaking these words, I'm staring at this piece of art that I have from Jeff Murray Art. He's on Instagram, check him out. Which also reminds me, Jeff, you asked on Instagram whether or not I'd gotten Poseidon's Trident yet, because it allows you to swim underwater. Abso-fucking-lutely I did. Oh my God, I've even gotten in my second game because that's a priority. Breathing underwater is absolutely key and much less stressful when you're playing that game. I have the Ascend the Acropolis piece sitting above my desk, and it's literally just like this complete interpretation of Athens in classical Greece, of walking up to the Acropolis. Everyone, check out that art. Ascend the Acropolis is like, it makes my life 1,000 times better. And also he has a Greek mythology piece that's going to go up in my new apartment and be like another focal point. So definitely check out his art. But also, God, check out AC Odyssey. This is the thing I think about all the time, is just what I would experience if I could go there. And so that's why the game is so perfect for me and so like exactly what I need. And I just, I mean, I highly recommend it. Obviously, it's very accurate. It's very detailed. It's very fun. And, we'll do another one of these sometime maybe, or I'll do an Instagram live soon. I just always forget to do them. But thank you so much for submitting these questions. It's sort of a freewheeling episode when I don't have a script to work off of. But it's been fun. I hope you've all enjoyed it and learned something and learned a little bit about AC Odyssey, if not ancient Greece in general. So many more ums without my script. Thank you all so much for listening. You're all so wonderful. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for being around and just like existing in this crazy listenership that I have of this very fun thing I get to do every week. You are all the absolute best. I am Liv and I love this shit.